derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And we're back live. Good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today. For the first time since last Wednesday, we're back live with the live show. Due to the CanPL trials, I was out of the studio at exactly the time we record shows, and I was there for a few days, but we're back. This is October 1st, 2018. I guess I got FIFA on the mind, so 2019. Duane, it's election day here in Quebec, so I have to go vote.
Yeah, and I think that you absolutely should vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but yeah, fun times in the world. We'll say that.
Yeah. Thank God there's no Ford members here. But, well, there kind of is. Anyways, yeah, election day today, but there was a big weekend of games in Major League Soccer. FIFA 19 came out on Friday, and we'll talk as well about the Canadian Premier League trials that happened in Montreal / Laval, to be precise, on Thursday and last Friday. But let's start where I really don't want to, but I guess we'll start there. The Montreal Impact played their most important game of the year last Saturday in DC against DC United, and they got trashed.
Yeah, not that very pretty. We had that one on in the press box watching the TFC game because obviously it had some, you couldn't argue whether it mattered or not, but I mean, technically it did. So people were sort of following that a little bit to understand what was happening. And it was like, goal. What the hell is happening down there? 5-0. I mean, yikes. That doesn't really bode well, particularly when you consider that even if you were to squeak into the playoffs, you're going to have to win a road game to start it. So
Rooney scored a goal from like 30 yards away. And yes, the final score line is 5-0. It was 1-0 after halftime, and I think it's truly a game of two halves, where in the first half, Montreal had about 3 expected goals, chances, clear-cut ones. Couldn't finish, couldn't bury them. Montreal had 62% of the possession in the first half, and if you're DC, you're smart. You're like, well, Montreal had good games against the 2 New York teams, where they won 3-0 against the Red Bull, draw 1-1 against NYCFC by using their counterattack. So, let's give them the ball. They actually had a lot of chances too, but they couldn't finish those chances. They weren't realistic enough. They weren't opportunistic enough. And Montreal got scored on 5 goals, 5 shots on that for DC United. DC United was really opportunistic, but that 1-0 first half was almost a lucky break for DC. But in the second half, Montreal really trying to push for a goal. Rooney scored at the 47th minute, opening up Montreal even more, because now Montreal's like, okay, we got to score too. And whenever you really, really have to score, you open up. You leave a lot of spaces open. You go for it. You play a little higher. All those cliches of trying to score goals, and yeah, DC just scored 3 more.
Yeah, the Rooney tip-in was the one that would sort of throw you over the edge there a little bit. I think that's over-aggression to say the least. But, I mean, that said, there's still 2 points up on points in the border, points in the pocket. That was an unfortunate result. They could have really put their foot to the throat, and they wouldn't have eliminated the teams below them with the win. They would, both New England and Toronto would have hung in just, but they pretty much would have all but eliminated them, and they would have put DC really up against it. DC would have had to win every game the game that they have in the pocket right now. They would have absolutely had to win it. United right now is slightly ahead on the points per game, 0.31, so 1.31 to 1.29, but it's pretty much a virtual tie at that particular point, but not the most attractive of results for the Impact, certainly.
And it's the fashion too, right? This loss, well, the last time they lost this big was 3-1 against Toronto a month and a half ago, just before the Red Bull game, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about this game was important, and then Montreal lost that one. That was in late August, and they came back and beat the Red Bulls 3-0. So it's all about how you come back from it. They're playing Columbus at home, and if Columbus loses all their game remaining, example, Montreal beats them on Saturday at home, which is possible because it's in Montreal, and Montreal plays well at home lately. It's still possible. Montreal only has 3 points left. 3 games left. 9 points on the board, potentially. And they have 2 points in front of DC. DC has 2 games in hand, 5 points remaining, and there may be the hottest team in the league over the last month and a half, 2 months, with the presence of Rooney, but especially Acosta, who probably is the hottest player right now in the entire league. So it's going to be difficult to stop the onslaught of DC United. You kind of hope that Columbus is the one that falters. And even then, they still had a big enough cushion that it's going to be difficult for the Impact to make the playoffs. Right now, the playoff percentage, the potential, is 28.9 for the Impact, and DC's around 42. If Montreal would have won the game, Montreal's playoff percentage chances would have gone to 68 and DC's to 9%. So that's how big of a game it was. The swing on both sides is incredible for the winner of that game, and it goes to DC. And Miguel mentioned after the game, he's like, we have to react better. I thought the first half we were lacking aggressivity, and we were lacking the finish that we need to have when we to be clinical, to really finish when you have an opportunity. And we didn't do that. And then it cost us in the second half. And then once the pressure was mounting, you saw this with many reactions from players. And he didn't single out any players. He just said some players will have to look themselves in the mirror because you cannot react this way. You have to keep your composure. Obviously, referencing Safir Taider, who lost his mind a few times in the second half by all those little small calls, right, that the referee can do. Example, you touched the ball last, but they still give it. You didn't touch the ball last, on the sideline, but he still gives it to the other one. The assistant didn't see it, or all those little calls that can add up to create frustration. And you saw that frustration boil over with some players like Tyler and others. And it's unfortunate that in the biggest game of the year, your best player was clearly injured. There was clearly something wrong with Piatti. Is it the first half calf knock that he received on what seemed like a normal play? He got tackled from behind a bit, but the knee of the DC players hit him really hard on the calf. Did this leave a mark? Was he injured from something else over the last few days of training or weeks? It's hard to say, but Piatti was not himself in this game, and we always said this, Duane, this year. The Impact will go as far as Nacho Piatti lets them.
No, of course. Absolutely. And the Impact, they really don't control it anymore, but you would have to think that DC, it's going to be difficult for them to win out. Although if you look at their schedule, they've got Chicago on it twice. They've got Reeling NYCFC on there. They have TFC as well at Audi Field, which TFC could be eliminated by that point. The only real tough one in there is that Dallas game on the 13th. Or Toronto, depending on how Toronto played on the weekend. You might consider that hard too, but at this point, because it is still a talented team, but nonetheless, it does look like a favorable schedule, and DC would have to like their chances to probably get 12 of those points. I would have to think 4 games at home, the way they're playing at home right now, it's a tough ask. 4 straight home games though, and they are playing quick. That is the one thing I will say. The DC United plays 7-13-17. That is a tough stretch, and that is Chicago, Dallas, Toronto, all at home though. I think, lots going to play out here, but you're right. I absolutely think that you have to look at DC. This was the conversation at BMO Field. It's like you look at the Impact, and I can draw a scenario in my head in which Toronto can somehow catch the Impact. The Impact only have 3 games left. Maybe they only get 2 points out of those 3 games or something. There's a direct play in there. It's possible. But the idea that DC is going to not continue to win is something that's hard to really believe too strong. So it was a marker for United. You've got to say that, particularly the new era, playing at Audi Field, Wayne Rooney on the team, a big marker for them. As much as this is technically the Canadian review, so we should be talking about the Impact here, but you can't ignore what's happening down in DC. Is they're a team that's going to be rolling quite a bit. Maybe tomorrow when we do a fuller review, we might talk a little bit more about the New York Atlanta game in the weekend, which sort of tightened things up for the Shield race, But DC is that one team that I've kind of got an eye on. DC and Seattle. There's your outside the box MLS Cup final right there. DC United versus Seattle.
MLS would really like that MLS Cup to be in DC United, wouldn't they? On that beautiful new field. Oh yeah, Audi Field. It would be good.
I think I'd have to take a trip down, watch my Capitals play, and try and tie it in. That'd be a fun weekend.
Sure, it'll be a fun weekend. We'll see.
Maybe Dawn would come. You think?
Well, yeah. It depends. If the finals in Columbus, there's no Don Garber there.
No, I meant Donnie, President Donnie. In Washington.
Do you think he even knows there's a soccer team in his city?
He doesn't strike me as a soccer guy, no. Although his young son, was seen with an Arsenal jersey on at one point. So maybe he's a soccer guy.
So he's not a soccer fan, is that what you're saying? Because he's got an Arsenal jersey. I can picture him saying, yes, we're great at soccer. And I've always been told that I was great at soccer. So, yeah.
We should talk quickly about Chelsea Liverpool. Did you enjoy that game, Kevin?
I enjoyed it until the 90th minute when Daniel Sturridge decided to F my plans and score a cracker of a goal for a guy who hasn't been playing really. I was like, what are you doing, buddy? Go back on the bench.
Put City to top of the league, though, so, it's all good that way.
Well, but speaking of City, did you see that moment of Abby McManus in Manchester City women's team where she did a big back pass to her goalkeeper and the back pass jumped over the keeper and she scored an own goal from half.
Well, sweet own goal. It's things happen sometimes out there. You got to look. Credit to United for finally getting on board. Manchester is now a hotbed of women's soccer, so that's a good thing going on.
Speaking of United, are we gonna talk about Mourinho and West Ham beating them 3-1? Sacked in the morning. You're getting sacked in the morning.
That was a delightful way to start my Saturday. No, for sure. And look, that's an ongoing story. And if you want to hear, we've talked a lot about Mourinho and United and our thoughts on that. And we will continue to talk about the Premier League, particularly as the MLS starts to wind down. We'll shift more that way. But certainly that story is just going to keep riding until it's done. And look, I'm not sure the Glazers want to pay him out. This is what it comes down to. Otherwise, why is he still there? He's not going to be cheap to get rid of. I think that they're going to probably run the season out with this guy unless they truly go into a tailspin.
Zidane's been seen he was at Old Trafford next to Sir Alex Ferguson. So, who knows? And apparently the talks have started, so who knows? Back to the Canadian review, and just to wrap up the Impact versus DC United in DC at Audi Field, Montreal's got 3 games left. 2 of those 3 games are at Stade Saputo. You got Columbus on Saturday. Then you have Toronto on October 21st. And you finish the season October 28th in Foxborough versus New England. Montreal's got a chance there maybe to get 6 points out of the 9 if you're looking at home games versus away games. Montreal only won 3 away games this year. Been a lot more successful at home. This could be very tight, and it could come down to differential at the end of the day, and that's why the 5-0 really hurts. But we'll see. Let's move to Vancouver because we'll keep on the negative side for a bit. So new coach, same lineup, same mentality, same result.
I guess it wasn't Robbo's fault. I don't know. You can't expect a ton to immediately do there. And I mean, you're having 2 teams that weren't exactly flying high. LA really badly needed that win, and 6 points back now with 4 to play. It's not impossible for the Whitecaps, obviously, but I can't see it. I just don't see them being able to break through. And at this point in time, it's I'm looking forward to seeing them firsthand and trying to get some answers next week to try and talk to them a little bit to see exactly what's going on. Of course, for those that don't know, Toronto and Vancouver play each other, which is it's weird for Vancouver to be playing in Toronto this late in the year. And they can't really be relishing that based on everything that's going on right now. And, as much as, again, Toronto's not great in the standings, the way that they've looked against New England, we'll talk about that in a minute, has to make people. This is what we were saying in press box with that too. Is it looks like they're going to run it out. But back to Vancouver, and it's not going to matter. Back to Vancouver though, it's just they're rudderless. This is the absolute way, and it was clear they made their play. They fired Carl Robinson. This is going to put a big target on particularly Bobby Lenarduzzi right forward, and maybe this is a conversation that we can have on this show. Simon and I had it on the interview you can listen to that was posted in the weekend, But I think at this point in time that you have to look at the selections they've made. You have to look at the overall picture of the sort of recruitment that they have. And I know that they're Bobby's going to say that it's all up to the manager's job, but there's immense influence by their front office there. And look, what have they done to deserve the amount of protection that they've had for over these years? And I know Bobby Leonarduzzi is a legend in Vancouver soccer. He's a legend in Vancouver sport, but maybe it's time for some new blood, some new thought there. And you give Leonarduzzi some kind of symbolic role with this club, because I don't want to throw him out in the street. I do think he deserves to be involved in this club in some way, but I don't know whether he should be in a leadership position anymore at this point, because
is president
what is the Whitecaps done? Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, is president a good job for him? Like, just put somebody in the GM part where the GM side, general manager or technical director, whatever you want to call it, of Major League Soccer is becoming more and more important as we move away from the manager being the only one doing recruitment and selection and networks of contacts. It's becoming such a big part of the job that a lot of teams are turning themselves to the Atlanta model, where Tata Martino just sends a bunch of names to the technical director. He's like, get me those guys or get me those guys, and I'll do what I can with what you give me. Not trying to bog himself down with I can't do this, and I got the cap here. Well, who's my DP? Who's going to be my how many money I have of allocation? No. Just give me players, and I'll coach them and I'll teach them stuff. That's the future, I think, of Major League Soccer manager, which is like everywhere else in the world now. Mauricio Sarri of Chelsea famously said, now, I'm not here to go into the telephone 10 hours a day to get players to come. I have people working on this. I'm going to manage and teach the players I have, and we'll see where it goes. I think there's a chance that's going to be the case. And if you're Vancouver,
it's the model at City as well. I mean, they brought in the Barcelona guys, right? It's essentially they've tried to it's basically Barcelona North at this point in terms of how they run the place. I'm not saying in terms of their play and success yet, but yeah, there's lots of clubs around the world doing that,
and even bigger clubs. So I truly feel this is going to be the case for Major League Soccer going forward. So if you're Vancouver, as much as you want to put it on Robinson, the eclectic nature of their transfers, recruitment, player personnel movement over the last few years, all the pieces that don't necessarily fit together, the lack of identity of team, the identity of play, the brand of football, the type of tactics that they want to use going forward. Like, you can't always rely on give it to Davies, because Davies won't be there next year. And you can't just rely on bringing a target man like Kai Kamara and hoping he's going to score 15 in a season for you to have success. So I truly feel there's a look in the mirror that needs to happen in Vancouver. You need to sit down, put on a piece of paper what you want to do, take the answers that you put on the paper, scotch taped it to the wall, and use this as vision. And then every single decision you take is according to that vision. Will it mean that vision will be correct and 100% right and you'll become good right away? No. But at least it'll give you a direction. You can always change direction once you made the first step, but a travel of 1,000 miles starts with one step. They need to take that first step.
It really seems like a lost season in Vancouver completely. They're not bad, but they're not good. And in fact, they are bad, because they're below the red line. So, although the line's black on MLSsoccer.com right now, which I disagree. They need to make that line red again anyway. But no, they're rudderless, as I said. Carl Robinson was sort of left dead man walking most of the season. I don't know how you manage under those circumstances. And we all knew that this was probably going to be his last year. Basically, this year seemed to exist to shop Alphonso Davies to get some money for them. So the real test is going to be how they proceed moving forward with that money that they got from Davies. So if I'm the Whitecaps, what they need to be doing is almost immediately figuring out what their direction is. And if they, want to wait to LAFC's season is over to bring in MDS, and that would be a fair way to do it. But if maybe they're talking behind the scenes right now and saying that if they need to bring someone else outside that they want to bring in to take over this program, that's fine. Hell, if they want to put Schmidt in, I don't think that'd be a good decision myself, and we would criticize it if it happened. But if that's the direction they want to go, they need to do it now, because this is going to be such a vital, important offseason for them. And I think that offseason is coming very quickly, in about 3 weeks. So you might as well get moving.
Speaking of off-season starting quickly, let's move to Toronto. Toronto played well against New England, got the result. We've seen the Sebastian Giovinco we haven't seen in a while. A nice stunner goal from about 23 yards out. But you know what I was surprised, or not really surprised? Altidore leaving the game injured. I'm like, yeah. So, when is it the time to say that Josie might be injury prone?
He is. I'll say it. He has been his whole career. He's an immense talent when he can play, but he's injury prone, and that was the question prior to 2017, which was Josie's greatest year domestically, because not great internationally, but in terms of his domestic play that year, he was phenomenal. He was absolutely vital to the MLS Cup win, and he will always have a place in the heart of Toronto supporters because of the way he played through that MLS playoffs. In the playoffs before too, he was big too. So he's a big game player, and also in the CCL run this year, he was a massive player, and he almost destroyed his body doing so. They brought in Jansen, this Jansen kid. He's not really a kid. The Jansen player that they brought in, who has been Nicholas Jansen, to give his full name. He is looking great. He had 8 shots on target during the game. And if you're TFC and you're looking at Jansen being able to produce the way he's been producing so far within this system, and then you look at Josie's injury problems, and at some point you might start to think, well, there has been some interest in him, and maybe selling him is not the worst idea. I'm not suggesting they're there yet, and nor am I suggesting that I particularly want to see them sell Josie Altidore, but you're absolutely right. He's not doing anyone any good when he's constantly whimpering off the field. He was asked, Greg Vanney was asked in the press conference after, obviously, about Josie's injury, and the question was framed, did you kind of just sort of shake your head and mutter to yourself when you saw Josie limping off? And Vanney's answer was he laughed. He kind of giggled to himself. He went, well, no, at this point in this season, I've seen it so many times that I don't even laugh anymore. I just go, okay, well, who's up next?
It's like, it's in a different reaction. Like, okay, next. Who's in line? Yep. Okay, are you warmed up yet? Okay, you go. It's almost like he's resigned to it. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but there's a certain resignation to the fact that, Josie's going to be injured.
I might, I've taped the press conference. I haven't done a sober second thoughts in a while, so maybe I will put one together this afternoon because it's worth listening to his post-game press conference, and I have it on recording here because of the way Vanney approached it. He wasn't first off, TFC played very well on Saturday. It was probably their best game of the year in MLS, which it's a bit late for that, but it was entertaining to watch, and they played very well against a New England team that's albeit not very good, but nonetheless, it's still nice to see them do that occasionally, and I think that put Vanney in a fairly decent mood to begin with, but there was an element of exact resignation. Like, they asked him that question too, where did you look at that and go, like, why is this team out of the playoffs right now? And he said, I'm not going to lie. At one point in the sideline, like, how the hell are we not in the playoff race? Like,
he probably was there on the sideline looking at Javinko score for like 35 yards and looking at Osorio's hustle to score and like the great combinations that happened. But like, we should have played like this 3 months ago. What happened?
They beat easily in a playoff. They beat one of the MLS Cup contenders right now, right? Like, it was a game. It wasn't a frustrating game to watch because most people understand that the season is over, but it was confounding. Like, how is this team so good some days and then just unable to get it done, especially on the road? It's hard to understand. But look, I tweeted out, and it got quite a bit of attention, actually. Sometimes it's not about titles and trophies and all that sort of stuff. It's just about enjoying the moment. And I think TFC fans at this point in time have to just enjoy the moment because
just enjoy the game.
It was a good game. It was a good day out. They'll be probably okay next year. Like, most of us assume that this is a blip and that they'll be fine again soon. But it's, the team did, like I said, Nicholas Jansen was a nice little addition that we haven't talked a lot about on this. When he signed, it was like, they signed a guy. And, really
no
didn't
one knew
care.
Him.
But,
he's like, who? Yeah. Who? All right, sure.
And he's played well. So that's nice that they brought a guy in like that. And I think most of their signings this year, and if you want to, we'll evaluate TFC in 3 weeks' time. We'll probably do both a Vancouver show and a TFC show to talk about that. And maybe 4 weeks' time, we'll talk about the impact because, but and we'll do a little more deep. But if you, in a very surface level, they didn't hit their signings this year. Oro's been hurt most of the year. He looks good. Akeche did nothing. He just never fit in. Vanderbilt has been okay, but I would rather have Beitashour.
Bono? Are you got to talk about Bono? Bono's been terrible. Are you got to talk about them?
Well, I have never been Bono's biggest fan, as people know. Although I'll say this, full credit to him for the distribution on TFC's second goal. It was a beautiful team goal, one of the best goals I've seen at BMO this year, and it started with a long throw by Bono. So credit where credit's due. But yeah, he's made some glaring mistakes this year that how you can't have if you're going to play at this level. Hell, he cost them the CCL final. He did. I mean, that's the blunt reality of it. He made an error, and that was the difference in the game, in this tie.
They never recovered from that. That loss lingered. That loss destroyed the confidence, and that loss did have ramifications in their season, and is one of the reasons why they're not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're not. It would be a miracle for them to make them, like an absolute mathematical miracle. You would have to have both DC and Montreal go in the toilet. If that happens, then sure, they have a chance to win out. But I think they might win out, and this was the topic in the conversation because there's no pressure on them now, and that, you know, they're getting healthy. So that combination, they're a good team with no pressure that's getting healthy. So there's a good chance that they might get 45 points. But the idea that DC and Montreal are both not going to finish above 45 beggars belief.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll do a little CanPL trials to talk about the next two solitudes, and we'll review FIFA 19, a little quick overview of the game's new features and the good times I had playing it.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. As always, you can follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Last Thursday and Friday in Laval at the Bois de Boulogne Soccer Center, where the Quebec Soccer Federation's head office are, it was the GA game CanPL trials for the Quebec provinces. And Duane, players from Japan, Toronto, faraway players came to try out. And I have to say, fun times were had at the Bois de Boulogne complex. Great soccer, great improvement, great people. Had the chance to meet all the coaches of the CanPL, talk to a few of them. Of course, Paul Byrne and David Klanakan, commissioner and president of the league, were there. I had great conversations with them, and I had a great conversation with Alex Bunbury that I recorded, and it will be on the next Two Solitude Soccer podcast, where I asked Alex many different things, and many good answers that we will have, and other stuff that I can't talk about here because we need it for the Two Solitudes. But let's just put it this way. If you're a fan of soccer, you're a fan of the CanPL, and you want a team in Quebec or in Quebec province, you might be happy in the next few months. But what I thought was really impressive, Duane, was the level. And the level of the last game. Because, let's face it, the trials, you have a lot of different type of players coming in. There was 220 players showing up on Thursday morning. And on the first day, they cut down to 58. It was supposed to be 50 for the next day's morning session. But 8 players, that's a good sign. When all the coaches don't agree, and they're like, well, okay, I can't. No, this guy has to be there too, and this guy too, and so okay, we'll agree on 58 instead of 50. So that's fun, right? When you can't agree who to cut, it's not like okay, we need to cut down. Okay, we only have 20 that we want. Okay, just put a bit of fillers in there. No fillers on Friday morning, and then those 58 were cut to 28 for the final session of the tryouts. That was an 11 versus 11 game with referees, everything that you needed. And as well, every single player was wearing the heart rate monitor, the GPS tracking system. What the CanPL, before I talk about the level, what the CanPL is doing is building a pool of players and a pool of database. That's Aaron Nielsen's job as well. Red Nation Online used to be a contributor for Red Nation Online, Aaron. And Aaron is putting together, with Anthony Totera, they're putting together a pool of database and player names from all the trials, especially from all the last sessions of all the trials where they have the trackers and the heart rate monitor. A lot of statistics, a lot of data to evaluate and to compare tries to tryouts, because there is going to be some difference of levels and there's going to be some difference of type of game. Some places players will know each other more. But what impressed me the most was the level of that game. It was really high. It was higher than I've seen in USL. I'm not saying this game was higher than every USL game I've seen, but from what I've seen live, yes, you had academy players from the Impact and other academies that were standing out. You had players from afar. The Japanese kid who came with a plane ticket and with a suitcase to the facility. That shows you commitment right there. And that guy impressed. He was one of the best there. I had a top 4, and I'll come with the name on the Two Solitude show, of my 4 most players that impressed me. And I've compared notes with coaches and player agents and scouts. And I'm not the only one who was impressed by a few names. So definitely you'll see those names in the CanPL in my mind. But the level of play, the eclectic, you can think a game with players that don't know each other could be eclectic, but because everyone wanted to make a good impression, there wasn't too much individualities. It was really a team game, players forcing, and you had matchup developing, battles developing, and just on the yellow side, orange side, you had a left back, former Montreal Academy product, and on the other side you had a guy from the national team of Grenada, Brown. And that battle was amazing all game long. And if I'm Stephen Hart, Halifax Wanderers coach, he's used to the Caribbean type of player, striker. You got a guy from the Grenada national team. He really looked good. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Brown goes to Halifax. Let's just put it this way. But yeah, this was impressive. The level was really high, technically as well, and tactically. And that was very fascinating. And it turned out that Alex Bunbury's blue team beat Sandro Grande's team 4-2 with a very good level, very good pace of play. The game was entertaining. And I'm optimistic for the 2019 season now, just with this game.
Yeah, look, I'm going to repeat something I've said before, too. We're very excited about the possibility that this league is going to give to young Canadians to develop. And obviously that is its raison d'etre. But I am equally excited to see what the international players that come into this league, which are going to make up half of it. 50% of the players that play in the Canadian Premier League next year are going to be not from Canada. And to me, that's key, that we get good international players interested in this league, because it's going to say a couple things about that. It's going to say that this league is decent and worthwhile, and it's at a level that they believe, that people from outside this country believe, is going to help their players grow. It's also, you're going to need a certain level of player there, because, to be honest, the Canadian domestic pool in the first couple years is going to be lower, probably. Except that, there'll be 10, 12, 20, maybe 30 top end that are guys that really stand up and take the brass ring, so to speak, and excel. But a lot of them are going to be guys that struggle a little bit, are going to have ups and downs, because we haven't had the program infrastructure here before, and there's going to be some struggles there. So it's key, I think, to find these gems, these guys that have fallen through the cracks in other systems, that are going to come to this country hungry and excited to be in a good first world nation with infrastructure and facilities that they're not used to in many ways, and take advantage of that and push themselves. Yeah, to try and find a contract in another league probably, but that's going to help this league grow. And I think that that's vital. So when you hear about stories of, in the Halifax trial, there was a guy from Ireland that came over that a lot of people were paying attention to.
Imagine Japan. This one came from Japan. Everyone was like, wow, that's commitment. And other players, like people coming from the New York, Manhattan, didn't sleep, they got on the bus the day before, drove all night in the bus, and got ready for the trials. Those are the stories that you want to hear, and the dedication of the players, right?
I think that there will be, I've always said that probably when push comes to shove and when they're making these final rosters up next spring, that we're probably going to see a lot of Americans that are at about a USL level. They're coming out of college, especially, that maybe they just view this as a different opportunity. They want a bit of an adventure or something like that they don't just necessarily want to play for some local state team, that they want to continue, somewhere else outside the country or whatever. I'm going to think you're going to see a lot of players like that more than you're going to see those Japanese guys. There might be one or two of them, and I'm sure there will be. The Japanese fella, if he impressed, hell, maybe he's going to come over and be a star in this league in the first year, and that's a good thing. I mean, There's going to be, I've always said there's going to be a Danny Dichio in every city. And Danny Dichio has meant a lot for the soccer community in Toronto. He's given back to it in the time that he's been here, right? When he's been a legend in TFC, blah, blah, blah. But there's going to be players like that DeVio. There's going to be players like, name me a Whitecap. But there's several Whitecaps out there that can name one. I know one's just not popping in.
What's his face? Kenny
Cooper?
No, not Cooper. Remember, he was a striker from Scotland who was good at the beginning of the Whitecaps in the Major
League Rangers. Soccer. Look, there's going to be players that are going to contribute to the local community, going to stick around. Hell, Carl Robinson's an example of that. Played in Toronto, obviously, came back to Canada and coached in Vancouver for a lot of years. This is a guy that probably never sets foot in Canada unless there's an MLS team here too. We're going to expand that footprint across the board, and some of these international players, not all of them, but some of them are going to stick around. You mentioned the Caribbean. I think that the Canadian Premier League is going to be a real bang for the Caribbean nations, and maybe you could view that from a purely partisan Canadian national team standpoint as a bad thing, but I think from a regional standpoint, that's a good thing. Combined with the Nations League, and you're going to see the Nations League is going to be if you're a Canadian Premier League manager, when those Nations League games kick off next month, I'm on a damn plane in wherever St. Grenadines is playing or whatever, because there's going to be some players out there that they could find that are going to be perfect for this league.
So you're good. Okay, what do? I work at a grocery store. Okay, good. Okay, so we need to talk first.
So you'll take 30 grand to play in Halifax, right?
You work at Benny's grocery store or Benny's hardware store. Yeah. You want another job? Okay, just come with me. No, exactly. And I do feel it's going to be fun. And this tryout, I didn't have any expectations before going to appreciate it. But I came out happy, and I came out realizing that it's here. It's real. We're getting a lead.
Yeah, I guess we'll end up with it because we're pretty long now. But I guess the one thing I'd really like to see from the Canadian Premier League, if anyone's listening out there, and some of them are, is I really hope soon we're going to find out exactly how that initial allocation is going to happen. Are they creating sort of a pool of players that they're going to draft from right now? Is that what's happening? Because that kind of would make sense. Maybe not in a traditional, I pick, you pick, you pick. Maybe just this is the pool of players that we're going to sign to a league contract, and then we're going to distribute them accordingly or something. At some point, we should hear that.
Here's what I think I figured. Those 28 in every city that make it to the final session, those are the players that they look at. Okay? Those are the players that they actually get a database from and that they truly observe. The rest of it is a weeding out process. The thing is now, once they've done all the God game CanPL job, they'll have a base of 7 times 28 type of players. Off of those players, there'll be invites to other camps, to training camps or camps before that will be I don't want to say selection camps, but there'll be more combines. Will it be a draft? Will there be a draft? Those are all things that needs to be decided yet. But there's going to be other camps. That's what I know. So you will get players from the 28s of every single city that are going to be invited. And players from abroad, other players. There was players that I know personally that were not doing the tryouts, that were in the stands on Thursday and Friday to observe. And yes, they were told on some occasions by their agents to don't do the tryouts. Don't lose your leverage. You're already established. You're already playing in a professional league and making money somewhere. Don't just go to tryouts. We'll be in touch with them once we have more details. But yeah, and I have more info on that. I've been talking to some scouts and some player agents that I'll be able to divulge on the next 2 Solitude Soccer podcasts. So make sure you subscribe to our show on patreon.com/sportspodcast network to get even more details from what I had learned over the last few weeks.
Yeah, $2 a month minimum donation for that, and $2 a month, guys. That's not even Starbucks, and you get lots of great information like that. The other thing we'll probably have to see too is what they're going to do with the CIS and NCAA players. And there's a lot of Canadians in the NCAA too that are Americans for that matter. So I think probably you'll see some kind of a draft for that. I've heard that said enough times, but yeah, it's exciting times. It's nice that they're looking at players now finally, and that we can even talk about a kid from Japan that got in his suitcase that to try out in Montreal. And this is the fun thing about this, and how many of us, we're lucky, how many of us that are fans get to watch a league get created from scratch. And I know there's a lot of cynicism out there, but this is fun. Just sit back and enjoy this ride, and I can't wait till next May.
Yeah.
April, May.
All right.
Well, I can. There's lots to happen before that. I don't want to rush anything ahead. We'll get there.
We'll get there. FIFA 19 came out on Friday, and I've been spending a few hours playing the game. Of course, the game doesn't change everything from FIFA, but Duane, there's a few new improvements. There's obviously the Champions League, right? So a lot of the game modes and parts of the game are centered around the Champions League to really truly help raise the level, hype the name, the brand. You have the music, and you start the game, and you have the champions. You're like, of course, they use all the branding, the new skins, the new colors to represent the Champions League. The mode that I've played the most so far, and it's been a popular mode over the last few years, is the Journey, where you follow the career of Alex Hunter, son of Jim Hunter, a fictional Chelsea legend. And I have to say, spoilers for players who hasn't played yet. There's going to be spoilers of the Journey story mode in about 5 seconds. But you get a lot of great new gameplay. And when you start the Journey, you're transported back to the early 60s. You're with Chelsea, and you're playing with Jim Hunter in a, not black and white, it's in colors, but it's like not HD. Yeah, like snow in the screen, and it's gritty. The pitch is all muddy, and you have to score Jim Hunter's 100th goal. I love that game. I scored 5 goals, of course, but I love that game because it feels amazing, and you have you're playing against Coventry City, and it's 1-0 for them, and you're playing, and it's mud everywhere. You're running, the mud's flying everywhere. It feels like a 60s game in England. This is an amazing game, and the mode itself, where you move from playing not just with Alex Hunter, who, by the way, spoilers alert, depending on what you did in FIFA 18, you keep that overall going into FIFA 19. So if you were decent with him, you keep your early 79 or 82, 83 overall to FIFA 19, and you have a big decision that comes right away. You move to a new team from the last ones you were, and you're going to Europe, and you're going to play in the Champions League. But what's interesting too is your friend Danny Williams, is playing with Chelsea, and you're trying to make him break the starting 11, and you play with him a lot too. And you play with Alex's sister, Kim Hunter, 16-year-old, who qualified for the U.S. Women's National Team World Cup qualifying squad, and you try to make it. And Alex Morgan is very present in this game with of course, an avatar of her, but it's her voice, and she's present in the game to help Kim Hunter perform and qualify the U.S. for the World Cup. So there's a lot of great play, and there's more of an RPG type of aspect to where each little decision, each little response you tell the manager, or response you tell the journalist, or you do not have a replay factor, right? So if you play a game and your target is to get 8.0 average with Danny Williams example, and you don't, there's repercussions to it. He's not going to react the same way. The next time you see him, his animation is going to be different. And he might have had a great life. He might have had a good life. But he might be cut because you didn't play well with him. So there's a factor that each big key decision has a repercussion and ramifications to the games you're playing. And it's pretty deep. It's the deepest iteration of the Journey on FIFA. And I've been having a lot of fun. And I have to say, the story, and now the fact that it's the last year of that story. There might be another similar thing next year, but it's not going to be with the same protagonist. It's going to be another player than Alex Hunter. So this is interesting, and it's the end of the story, and it's a lot bigger, a lot deeper, and well made than the last 2 iterations. And I have to say, it's quite enjoyable.
Well, that's good to hear. The one question I always ask is, I'm going to, for the record, Kevin is the FIFA guy. I'm the Football Manager guy. I will be buying Football Manager 19 in the next little while. As soon as it becomes available, I'm looking at the avatar for Football Manager 17. And the point I'm making with this is that I didn't have 18 because I never buy it. I don't buy it every year. I always buy it every other year because in my mind, there's not enough upgrades from year to year for me to justify spending it each year. So every other year I buy it. So I'll ask that question to you. If you are not a hardcore completist when it comes to the FIFA series, would you upgrade from 18 to 19, or do you think that this is one that maybe you could skip to 20 if you're not a completist?
I'm more happy with 19 so far than I was with 18. I wish I could have skipped 18. There's the pace of play, the play itself. It plays a lot more realistically. It's a bit more difficult. There's a bit more chaos included, but there's a bit more realism in how players react to first touches. The first touch is very different. I've scored a goal off a flicker, off a back heel of a player, because in his position that he was, the ball was coming a certain way, and the way he was positioned, if you play first touch and a strike on the first touch, that was the only way that made sense. Otherwise, he would have to control the ball, put the ball down, and then shoot. And those were understood and computed by the game, and that made for more realism. Made for difficult times too, because it goes away further, and you don't control it as much. But that aspect of controlling the ball, running, playing with your teammates, it's a bit more realistic. It's slowed down. The pace of the game slowed down a bit, which is more realistic to the game of soccer. And what I thought was really interesting too is the tactics included, the dynamic tactics they call, where you do have players making a run that makes more sense. They're making a decision. The decision process of your teammates that you're not controlling makes a bit more sense soccer-wise, depending of the tactics. And it's a bit easier to choose your tactics this time around. There's like a sliding scale, and you can decide, okay, do I want possession? And if I want possession, how much possession do I want? If you want pressure once you lose the ball, how much of that do you want? Or maybe you want pressure all the time, and maybe you want to hold up man, target man, or maybe you want more a possession base. Maybe you want to play the offside line like a la Divayo and have that type of striker. So you can choose those a bit easily. And once you choose it, the reaction of the players versus what you chose is a bit more realistic. So far, after 3 days of playing, I'm a bit more happy with FIFA 19 than I was with FIFA 18. And of course, there's FIFA Ultimate Team mode, which, we're not going to lie to each other, is there to make money with microtransactions for EA Sports. It has a lot of improvement, yes. And you have a better way because you can become world champion in the entire world, right? That's the mode where they play competitively for champions. It's a bit longer now to qualify because you have to play your 5, what they call you get your level. They check your levels. I forget the name off the top of my head now, but you play to get ranked, and once you're ranked, you start in 1 to 10 divisions, and then you graduate, you get rivals, you beat, and eventually you'll get to the level where you play for champions, and you'll be invited to the weekend league. And once you're in the weekend league, you win big prizes, and you can qualify for qualifiers for the FIFA World Cup in your region, and eventually you can qualify for the big thing versus actual esports athletes. So I have a trouble saying esports athletes. Okay, so esports, amazing, great players.
Competitors.
There you go, esports competitors. So those are fun. I still have to dabble that part of it, but there's a lot of improvement on the gameplay on the foot side. But itself, so far, I would give it a good maybe 85%. And the reviews have been pretty good, 85 on Metacritic. You have other places that are giving him maybe 79, 85, 89%. And for FIFA, those are pretty good reviews because you have the PES army who always destroys FIFA on any given review. So when the review's positive, it's actually a big task because there's a lot of anti-EA feeling out there. And doesn't matter if they actually love the game, they're going to trash it. So no, I'm really satisfied with the money I spent on this game so far. And I can't wait to finish the show and go back to playing with Alex Hunter.
Yeah. All right. I'll leave it at this then. Let me ask you a quick question. Is there any esports bars popping up in Montreal? Because there's one that just opened here in Toronto.
There's like 2, 3. Well, yeah, I don't know if they're esports bars. You know what they remind me of? Like virtual reality bars in the late 1990s. Where you could go there, you could do virtual reality. I don't know if it's viable yet, and I've seen a few of them open and close already. But there's one famous one now in Saint Laurent that does have some great tournaments, and you have like the player, esports player for Montreal, Lee's Montreal, who goes there often, and you have meetups, and you have training sessions, and you have like camps, development camps that you can subscribe to. Your kid can go, you can go to learn to play better at all those different games, FIFA being one of them.
All right. On that note, if you like video game reviews, we will review Football Manager in a couple weeks, as I said, as soon as I can dive into it a little bit and talk about some of the features there. If you do like video game stuff, we can do a little bit more of it, but let us know. In the meantime, Kevin, as always, I'm going to remind people that for $2 a month, you can get our Patreon-only show, Two Saltitudes, which does dive deep into the Canadian Premier League and Canadian subjects. But on that note, Kevin, $2 a month, but I'll let you say goodbye as always.
Make sure you put that $2 a month because you'll get a chance to hear an exclusive interview with Alex Bunbury and my exclusive thoughts on the few players that I will name by name that did great jobs in the tryouts that I feel will be in the Canadian Premier League in the next couple of months. At 24th Minute to follow Duane on social media, at Kev Laramee to follow me. We'll be back tomorrow with a more weekend review looking at Major League Soccer and the Premier League. And will we get Jose Mourinho sacked in the morning? Ooh, you're getting sacked in the morning. Have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.